In the mountains of northern New Mexico and southern Colorado, there is a time machine. This scene was recorded in 2015, but a similar image just as easily could be made decades earlier. Come along with us, and for a few days, we'll step right back into the 1950s. The Cumbres Toltec Scenic Railroad runs over 64 miles of narrow gauge track between Antonito, Colorado and Chama, New Mexico over Cumbres Pass. Originally built by the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad in the 1880s, this 3-foot wide narrow gauge railroad was operated by the Rio Grande up until the end of regular freight service in 1968. In 1970, the Rio Grande sold the line between Antonito, Colorado and Chama, New Mexico to the states of Colorado and New Mexico, abandoning the rest of the narrow gauge on to Durango and Farmington, New Mexico. Today, one can ride daily tourist trains during the spring, summer, and autumn. But in addition to the train ride, there is this notion of riding a time machine. The Chama yard has many of the structures that were here in regular service, including the water tank, coal tipple, log bunkhouse, depot, and engine house. Also on the property are a multitude of wooden freight cars, also veterans of many decades of service on the Rio Grande narrow gauge. There are 11 steam locomotives on the property, and at the time of our visit, 5 282s were in service. Number 463 was built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in 1903. At one time or another, she worked most areas of the Rio Grande narrow gauge system, including running over what is now the Cumbres Toltec. Numbers 484, 487, 488, and 489 were built by Baldwin in 1925. These locomotives primarily operated on the Rio Grande line that ran from Salida, Colorado, over Marshall Pass and on to Gunnison, and the line that ran from Alamosa down to Chama, New Mexico, and on to Durango. During our visit, the 480s had all just turned 90 years old and are still in hard mountain service. Several times a year, groups will charter freight trains on the Cumbres Toltec and try to turn back the clock and capture images that could be from the 1960s, 50s, or even earlier. Come along for several days of charters and see what this line must have been like in the 1950s. It's Monday, September 28, 2015. And locomotive 484 is moving about the Chama yard, being made ready for the day. Over at the engine shop, number 489 is also being prepared. The first stop after leaving the engine house is the ash pit to have the fire cleaned. Next, 489 is moved to the water tank. While 489 continues its morning preparations, 484 is pulling the cars for the first train of the day out of the yard. This section of the train is primarily 25-ton wooden boxcars constructed in 1904 and rebuilt around 1925. Also included are the 6,500-gallon tank cars built in the Rio Grande's Alamosa shops between 1924 and 1930 for UTLX. The other cars that we will see were all built in the same era, so it's easy to see why this railroad is called a time machine. 489 is backing through the yard to retrieve the caboose and then couple on to the back of the train. Back in the Rio Grande days, eastbounds would arrive in Chama from Durango, and the trains broken into sections. Cars such as the tank cars that were loaded in Chama would be added in as well. Between Chama and Cumbres, 14 miles away, the ruling grade is 4%, and the Rio Grande made a regular practice of using these two-engine trains to haul cuts of cars to the top of the pass, then assemble them into one long train bound for Alamosa, Colorado, roughly 90 miles away. .489 has coupled on to the rear of the train. Before it leaves, let's look at the route that our trains will be traveling over today. Chama, at an elevation of 7,863 feet above sea level, is located in the southwestern state of New Mexico, in the far north-central part of the state. The Rio Grande Railroad located a division point here, a location roughly halfway between Alamosa and Durango, where crews and locomotives could be changed. There is a yard here, as well as a depot and engine terminal. Upon leaving town, the line crosses the Chama River, then passes a grassy plain before going over an area called the Narrows, sharing a narrow valley with the river and adjacent Highway 17. The 4% grade starts here, and the railroad begins to wind back and forth to keep the gradient as shallow as possible. At Lobato, a large iron bridge crosses Wolf Creek. The Cumbres and Toltec continues weaving back and forth as it climbs out of the valley, then crosses into Colorado near the water station and siding at Cresco. The area here becomes more alpine in nature as the line passes Hamilton's Point and enters an area known as Coxo. At Coxo, the railroad makes a big loop, then climbs atop a high rock outcropping known as Windy Point. Just beyond Windy Point, we reach Cumbres, the summit of the railroad at an elevation of 10,015 feet. Our train is leaving Chama, so let's imagine we are back in the 1950s and enjoy the sights and sounds of a steam-powered Rio Grande freight train climbing the hill. Our train is leaving the Narrows and is already hard at work climbing the 4% grade. The railroad still uses whistle signals, as we'll see here. Our train is crossing Lobato Trestle, which is 300 feet long and 150 feet high at its tallest point. This train looks much like what one would have seen in the 1950s. A few boxcar loads, crude oil being transported from Chama to the refinery in Alamosa, and some work cars being repositioned. Rio Grande practice was to have the wooden caboose behind the pushing steam locomotives for safety reasons. Our train has crossed into Colorado and is stopping for water at Cresco. We've climbed to a vantage point high above Coxo and Windy Point to watch the train struggle the last miles to Cumbres. Our train has arrived at Cumbres. The 484 will head for Antonito and will pull our train tomorrow, while 489 returns to Chama for another cut of cars. Monday afternoon, 489 departs Chama with another string of cars eventually bound for us to use in Antonito. We'll visit some places we didn't see on the morning run. We're at Coxo. This morning, we were looking down on here from high above. Our train is rounding Windy Point and will shortly be at Cumbres. Lonely Cumbres is the highest point on the railroad. Our train is arriving at Cumbres. After doing some switching, it will make a late-night run to Antonito. Tuesday morning finds the 484 in Antonito, Colorado, being serviced to handle our freight for today. Antonito usually only has one locomotive under steam to handle the daily passenger train. Today, there are 3. There are freight charters for the next 2 days. Today, we will make a round trip to Osier, Colorado. Tomorrow, the freight train will return to Chama. Let's look at the route between here and Cumbres. Antonito is located in the state of Colorado, in the far southern part of the state, at an elevation of 7,888 feet. It's always been a railroad town and was once the junction where the line behind us from Alamosa split to go to Santa Fe on the left and Durango to the right. The original Antonito depot is still here, but the Rio Grande did not allow the 2 states to use it or the yard in 1970 for the new Cumbres Toltec. Instead, just west of here, a new yard was constructed for the narrow gauge. Located here is a depot and shop complex, as well as a turning loop. At the edge of the loop is a repair shop where the volunteer group called the Friends of the Cumbres Toltec restores the old freight cars that we will see in this program. Moving on to the west, the line passes through a flat, desert-like area. The first structure of any note is Ferguson's Trestle, which we will see later in the program. Beyond here, the railroad weaves back and forth, gaining elevation. We cross into New Mexico, the first of 11 state line crossings on the railroad. At Lava, there is a loop and water tank, which we will visit as well. The ruling grade on this part of the line is 2.5%. At a place called Whiplash Curve, the railroad winds along 3 levels of track to keep the gradient to a minimum. Just past Whiplash is the siding and Y at Bighorn, another place we will visit. As the railroad continues climbing, the surveyors had it winding around every hillside. As we climb, the scenery gradually changes as well. Soon we come to the section camp and water stop at Sublette, New Mexico. Beyond Sublette, the line is on a high ridge above the Los Pinos Valley. The siding at Toltec is located here. Beyond the siding is Toltec Tunnel Number 1, commonly called Mud Tunnel. Past the tunnel is Phantom Curve, another place that we will visit. The railroad continues clinging to the side of the mountain, but at the very edge of Toltec Gorge, the surveyors literally ran up against a wall of rock, so Toltec Tunnel Number 2 is called Rock Tunnel. The trees start to diminish here. This area had a large fire in the 1870s, and the resulting grassland became a popular place to graze cattle, so the trees haven't come back. At the old section camp of Osier, Colorado, there is a modern dining hall as well as a section house, depot, water tank, and stock pens. The daily passenger trains stop here for lunch. We continue following the Los Pinos River and cross Cascade Creek on a large bridge that is 137 feet above the water. As the line winds around, the river rises almost to track level, the railroad here being mostly flat. The area called Los Pinos is a favorite of railroad photographers, and we will stop here as well. There's a big horseshoe curve here, as well as a water stop. The railroad begins climbing here at Los Pinos, and we come to the Apache Canyon Road crossing, where we will get a fantastic sunset shot. We're almost at the summit, and the line climbs ever higher, passing the Cumbres Loop, called Tanglefoot Curve by rail fans. Then we're once again at 10,000 15-foot Cumbres Pass. .484 and her 14-car train are underway out of Antonito with a group of happy photographers aboard. Our first car is a water car that'll be set out at Bighorn. One of the iconic places on the line is Lava Tank. We'll be back here later on today. At Bighorn, we were overtaken by the daily passenger train to Osier. While the purpose of the charters was to do line-side photography in the autumn season, it was a spectacular time to ride the train as well. The area between Bighorn and Sublette offers a dramatic change in the scenery. Sublette, New Mexico was a section camp where track workers lived and maintained their section of track. This camp was used by the Rio Grande all the way up to the end of operations and is being lovingly preserved by the Friends of the Cumbres and Toltec. The leaves were lovely this year as the train winded high above the Los Pinos Valley. Our trip today only went as far as the old section camp of Osier, Colorado, before we turned around. Here we take the siding so the afternoon passenger train can leave the lunch stop and continue on to Antonito. On our way back to Antonito, we continued stopping at various locations to do run-bys. Our train is longer than it was this morning. At Toltec Siding, we picked up some cars that were left here Monday night. Lonely Lava Tank was the location of our last run-by for the day. We tried in vain to get a shot of the setting sun through the clouds. Wednesday morning once again finds 3 locomotives under steam in Antonito. We're underway before dawn, hoping to get a sunrise scene. Today's train has a mid-train helper, once again a regular fixture in the Rio Grande days. The helpers were usually farther back in the train, but the crew placed it here for operational reasons. The sunrise was spectacular, and we did several run-bys here at Ferguson's Trestle. This 35-car train was the longest to run on the Cumbres Toltec in many years. This train has elements of several types that the Rio Grande would have run. Tank cars returning to Chama to be reloaded, pipe loads for Farmington, New Mexico, and general freight. In the 1950s, the Rio Grande often ran entire trains of pipe going west. Toltec, we got out of the way of the passenger train. West of Toltec siding is Toltec Tunnel Number 1, usually called Mud Tunnel due to the unstable nature of the ground it passes under. Cascade Trestle is the highest bridge on the line at 137 feet high and 408 feet long. At Los Pinos, there's a large horseshoe curve and a water tank where our empty tenders will be replenished. Our last shot was at the Apache Canyon crossing, where our train roared off into the sunset. Thursday morning found 484 being serviced after a late-night arrival with the freight equipment from our charter. .463, however, was about to leave town. The Friends of the Cumbres Toltec were going to have a charter featuring maintenance of way equipment in a couple of days, and 463 was taking some of it to Antonito. Other cars in the train were going to Antonito to receive paint or other maintenance over the winter. Right behind the 463 is Derrick O.P., which had been restored over the years by the Friends. It was built by the Rio Grande's Alamosa shops in 1911 and is one of the most unique pieces in the historic collection. Cumbres, more work cars were added that had been carried up there on previous trains. As the 463 heads away down the valley, it's time to end our visit. The Cumbres Toltec Scenic Railroad is one of the finest preserved steam railroads in the entire world. In addition to the regular tourist trains, every now and then one can take the time machine and get a glimpse back into the old times.